Jared Goff's initial foray yesterday in his first game, only 134 yards passing. What did you make of Goff's debut?
Well, I mean, it was uneven. I thought there were some good moments, but, yeah, I mean, largely, you're making your debut in a driving rain in L.A., which I didn't even know that happened in L.A., but a rough day for him to get out there. They were obviously conservative with the passing attack. There was a lot of, short stuff, a lot of slants, a lot of screens. But he's playing in a bad situation with, a really bad offensive line in front of him. We finally saw Todd Gurley get loose a little bit yesterday. But I think with Goff, there wasn't anything where you're like, oh, my God, the game's too big for this kid. He panicked in his first outing. But it also wasn't that Marcus Mariota perfect passer rating debut that he had in week one last year. So it was, there were some ups and downs, but I think there was enough to be encouraged about.
How do we read Dak Prescott's year one? Some will say offensive line and ground attack is making him look better than he actually is. Others will say, look what he's doing when he does have to throw the football and make some plays. Where do you fall in his development this year?
Well, I think he's done great. And, it's always tough to say after 11 weeks how good someone's going to be. But I think with Dak, what we can do is say that he stayed ahead of the curve. And you look at other rookie quarterbacks, whether that was Mariota and Winston last year or Carson Wentz this year, NFL defensive coordinators have a way of figuring you out. Now they have, a way of saying, okay, this is where he's weak. Let's attack him here, whether that's a blitz or underneath coverage or whatever it might be. So I think a credit to Dak and that coaching staff and the offensive line and everyone there is that he's been able to stay ahead of that curve and not get bogged down once teams can start to scheme for him a little bit. So I think he deserves a ton of credit. Obviously he's putting in the work, or he wouldn't be holding off a guy like Tony Romo. They wouldn't have the best record in the NFL. And no matter how good the O-line is, how good Zeke Elliott has been, he's had to put the team on his back at times and make big throws and not make mistakes. So I think it's weird because we in the media, it seems like we either give somebody all the credit or none. And sometimes with guys like Dak Prescott, they deserve a good share of the credit, but it's okay to tip your hat to the, all the support staff they have around them that are helping them play as well as they are.
Matt Miller, Bleacher Report, joins us here on the show, NFL Draft lead writer. When we look at the development of other quarterbacks, we're always kind of assessing footwork and mechanics. And then Aaron Rodgers has seemed to have all of these different questions around him, and some would say it is the mechanics. Would you say that is part of the problem here, or is that kind of finding a problem where there isn't any for Rodgers, or at least there's other things to be worrying about, and it's not kind of the mechanics or the footwork for him?
I think there are a lot of other things to worry about, and it's weird because now people will point out that Rodgers has mechanical issues when last year it was, oh, my God, did you see that throw he made, off his back foot, across his body, and we praised the fact that he was able to be the NFL's best quarterback without those picturesque mechanics. So it's like a double-edged sword. When you're winning, we praise those things. When you're losing, it's, oh, well, you got to fix your mechanics. You're not any good anymore. I think in Green Bay, yes, he has been bad at times throwing the ball down the field, but I also think the receivers haven't gotten the separation that they would normally get. The offensive line has struggled a little bit more this year. I think you could also look at the defense, which is, again, a problem. No pass rush. They can't keep up with any kind of speed outside the hashes. They've been banged up in the secondary. And so it's more of a total systematic failure in Green Bay than, it would be easy to say Aaron Rodgers isn't good anymore. That's not the case, and he is struggling a little bit, but that whole team is struggling right now. And I think we've still got a quarterback who's throwing, 25 touchdowns to 7 picks right now. And I know numbers aren't the entire thing, but he's still getting the job done at a pretty high level. It's just that now we're seeing maybe some cracks in the facade that we hadn't seen in the past.
The flip side of that equation last night was what happened on the Washington side of things, and Kirk Cousins made some incredible throws. Now, Marcus Mariota and Kirk Cousins have looked like Marino and Elway the last 2 weeks against the Packers defense. Was that Cousins making those plays happen? Was that defensive breakdowns? And if it is Cousins, does this mean Washington has to give him that big contract that he wants?
Oh, he's going to get some money. He's going to get paid by Washington. I think they have to. And he did play very well last night. I don't want to take anything away from him. Yes, the Green Bay secondary is not very good, and they don't get a ton of pressure on the quarterback, but he also made some throws that were very good. And he's playing behind an offensive line that's beat up. His left tackle Trent Williams is gone right now, and they're rolling in a kid a lot of people have never heard of and asking him to stop, the top tier guys, and he's doing a good job of it. So they're playing without a full roster there, and he's still executing well. And with Kirk, you're never going to get that great down the field thrower who is zipping the ball 45 yards on a line, but he is accurate. He's not going to turn the ball over, and he's going to move the chains. And I think that's what we're seeing this year. And like last night, 3 touchdowns against Green Bay, and the week before, 2 touchdowns against Minnesota, and being able to just consistently move the ball. And I think of Washington, we're going to see a lot of turnover in the skill positions because they don't have a run threat that really scares you. The receivers are getting older. They're both free agents, and Deshaun Jackson appeared our son. So there's going to be a lot of turnover there, and having that kind of unifying force on offense with Kirk Cousins, having that continuity at quarterback could be pretty big for them.
Dak Prescott, for a lot of people, came out of nowhere to do what he's doing, a 4th-round draft pick. Is there a quarterback in college right now that you're looking at and you say, ooh, there's some parallels there. This guy could slide under the radar into the 3rd or 4th round, but like a Russell Wilson or like a Dak Prescott could be drafted and then become a franchise guy next year?
I don't see anyone who meets that mark. And it's interesting that you compare, Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott are both really similar in that regard because they both produced at very high levels in college, but were written off for different reasons. With Wilson, it was he was too short, and with Dak, it was, he's run this funky offense, and he's a run-first guy, even though that changed dramatically over his last 2 years in college. So right now, I don't see anyone who meets that mold. Maybe you could look at Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, but he's not playing in that pro-style system that Prescott played in as a senior, that Wilson played in at Wisconsin. He's in that air raid under Cliff Kingsbury, so it's a little different, but he definitely has the physical tools to where if he's getting overlooked to the fact where he's a 3rd or 4th-round pick, he is a guy who has the tools. I mean, he has the strongest arm in college football. He's a good runner. He's a tough kid. He's smart. So all those traits are there that if he gets in the right situation, you could maybe see him become that franchise quarterback. But a lot of times those guys are going pretty early to bad teams like Jared Goff and being put in these awful situations.
NFL draft lead writer for Bleacher Report, Matt Miller, is our guest. Finally, do you like or dislike Chad Kelly at the next level?
I dislike him strongly. And this is like, even if you take away the off-field stuff, which is pretty major with him, the on-field is not that good. I mean, I know he runs around and he makes some ridiculous throws, but his decision-making is poor. His accuracy is pretty average. So I was not a fan of his on the field. And then when you factor in the off-field, getting kicked out of Clemson, you've got the running onto the field to fight people at his brother's high school game. You got this Snapchat picture that came out, over the weekend. There's just a lot of negatives. And so I think with Chad Kelly, yes, there are positives. He has a strong arm. I love his toughness on the field, that, he's kind of a gunslinger and just doesn't care. Like, those things are all great. But, there's a little bit too much Jay Cutler there for my liking.